Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's John Campea, and this is a companion video. Now, what is a companion video? I'm glad you asked. Every day on the John Campea Show and in the afternoons on Open Mic, we take live questions, but sometimes we don't have time to get around to all the live questions that come in. So what I do is I want to make sure you guys know that when you send those live questions in, they do get answered in a video. So I gather them all up and we address them here on companion videos. Now, we got a big backlog, actually, of companion video questions to do, so we're not going to get through all of them in this video, but keep coming back over the weekend. We're going to have more companion videos coming up till we get them all cleared out. So, with all that out of the way, let's jump into getting caught up on some of these questions. And the first one we're going to get caught up on today, as I have this thing is way out of sync. There we go. Look at that. Okay, the first one today comes to us from Murray Reich, who writes, where do you see that Star Wars Toxicity has gotten better? The weather changed or something? Well, I mean, I don't really know what's happening. Somebody brought this up on the show the other day. They said, you know, have you also noticed that the toxicity has died down a bit? And I have. And I attribute that to probably two things. One, some people just getting a little bit bored of writing it because they've written it a million times. Or two, some people, I think, like, remember, we can't forget this. There are a lot of Star Wars people out there. There are a lot of people who just don't like Star Wars Last Jedi. And there's nothing wrong with that. We got to remember that just because somebody doesn't like Star Wars Last Jedi, that does not make them a toxic fan. Even if they brutally hate it, that doesn't make them a toxic fan. That just means it's a movie they don't like. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are a segment out there that take it too far. Let's just say that. Take it to attacking other people who happen to like the films, or whether, you know, eliciting, you know, racist stuff or, you know, sexist stuff, homophobic, whatever, for whatever reason. I like to think that the better human nature sometimes comes through, and I think after a lot of it, I think some people probably said, oh, you know what? I'm coming across actually like a toxic fan, and I'm just going to change my language. I'm not going to talk like that anymore. So I have noticed a decrease. Maybe it's just a little, but I have noticed myself a bit of a decrease, and I attribute it to, I think some people are just getting bored of it. And number two, I think some people are just starting to realize, oh, I'm probably coming across the way I don't even mean to come across. And I'm going to stop, and I'm going to change the way I'm saying things. And so, just because I like to believe in people's better nature, you never know. So, anyway, that's just what I noticed. Maybe you haven't noticed it, but I have noticed a little bit of a decrease, and it's a nice change. Let's see. Next up, James L.H. writes, hey, John, new from the UK. Oh, thanks so much, man. Really enjoying what you do. Catching up on some previous shows and looking forward to asking about movies and TV. Well, thanks a lot for writing that in, James. I'm really glad to have you along as a new viewer, and I look forward to all the questions you contribute in the future. All right. Next up, Emil Rem writes, in which round will Khabib destroy Conor? So what he's talking about is an upcoming UFC fight between Khabib, who is, I believe, pound for pound, the baddest man on the planet. I think he's a living nightmare. I don't think anybody in the UFC wants to fight this guy. But he is currently the lightweight champion. Conor McGregor is now back after serving no suspension, which is ridiculous. Khabib will destroy him. Of course, Conor McGregor has a puncher's lucky chance. Absolutely everybody does in the UFC. But I really believe Khabib is going to destroy him, and I think it will happen in round 3. I think it'll happen in round 3. So let's see how that turns out. All right, Chef's Cook writes, hey, John, what happened to the Battlestar Galactica movie? Hey, so before Ronald Moore got his rebooted Battlestar Galactica show going, which is my all-time favorite show, by the way, there was an attempt to get a movie going. Now, after then Ronald Moore's show came out, one of the most popular shows of all time, after it finished airing, I believe it finished airing like 2009 or something like that. Anyway, after it finished airing, there was talk that Bryan Singer, who directed X-Men 1, X-Men 2, he directed the upcoming Bohemian Rhapsody, a movie that's coming out. He was looking to get a movie going of Battlestar Galactica. Not a continuation of the TV series, just a new incarnation of the story with feature films that Universal was hoping to spin into a new franchise. But that just disappeared. They gave up on that a long time ago. Then, in 2016, a bunch of producers who were attached to Universal, the news came out that they were starting to get that going again. They wanted to get a Battlestar Galactica movie going. And a lot of people like me got really excited, and then poof, it just disappeared again. There was never a new director really attached to it. It never really got a lot of headway. I gotta believe at some point, because that is, all the studios are about franchises right now. That is something that could be a franchise. Battlestar Galactica could be a franchise. The mythology is awesome. It's great sci-fi. It's deep sci-fi without being too deep that average audiences can't wrap their heads around it. It's perfect. It's great. I really hope it gets going at sometime soon. But yeah, 2016 was the last time I heard anything serious about it. And I don't think that thing's going anymore. So it's going to take a new effort to get it going. And I hope that happens someday soon. All right. Let's see. Brandon Martin writes, let's see. Spoiler warning for Infinity War. If Batista wants out of the MCU, could they make it so Drax could not be brought back after the snap? Somebody else brought that up once before, Brennan. Here's the problem with that. You would have to come up with some huge convoluted story loop to explain why does everybody but Drax the Destroyer come back? Because either they come back or they don't. And if you're going to like cherry pick out one guy who doesn't, then you got to come up with some big narrative explanation as, so why does everybody except that one guy come back? It just so happens to be the one guy who had problems with Disney. Like, so it's a little bit more complicated than that. I honestly think, well, number one, Dave Bautista said if they don't use James Gunn's script, he was going to be asked to be let out of his contract. But it does look like Disney will use James Gunn's script. So I don't think Dave Bautista is going to be asking to get out. So there's that is there. So this is probably, the point's probably moot anyway. But if for some reason he still decided he wanted out and Disney let him out, then you recast the role. It's a lot simpler just to recast the role, I think. So I think that's what they would do. But again, Bautista only said he was going to be asked to be let out if they didn't use James Gunn's script, and it looks like they're going to use James Gunn's script. So problem averted for now at any rate. All right, next one. James LH writes, first, what you posted about by the Russo's commentary on Hemsworth. Always liked his Thor. Still one of my favorite films outside MCU of his was Rush. Oh, Rush was great. And he was fantastic in it. And Captain America Civil War, Daniel Bruhl, was also in Rush, co-starred with Chris Hemsworth. And I believe Bruhl got an Academy Award nomination for that. And I thought Chris Hemsworth was every bit as good in that movie as Daniel Bruhl was. And Bruhl got an Academy Award nomination. So it's kind of like an MCU on screen before they were both in the MCU with Rush. I love Rush, directed by Ron Howard. And yeah, Chris Hemsworth was great in it. And I'm with you, man. I've always loved Thor. And the Russos talking on the director's commentary about how, I mean, they kind of insinuate that Chris Hemsworth might be the best actor in the MCU. The best ongoing actor. I mean, yes, of course, you've had Anthony Hopkins in there. And yes, of course, you've had Robert Redford. But I mean, those were like never big, huge, but huge parts. But the Russos really talked him up and how great of an actor he is, and they're absolutely right, and I love that, and that's one of the reasons why I've loved Thor so much. All right, let's move on. The Friendly Film Fan writes, is there a review embargo in place for Crazy Rich Asians? If so, when does it lift? Yeah, so this obviously was a question that came a couple days ago, but yeah, they held off on the reviews. They held the review embargo for Crazy Rich Asians pretty late. Surprisingly so, because the reviews have been spectacular. Like the last I checked, it was, let's see, Crazy Rich Asians. The last time I checked, it had a 98. Now it's probably dropped a little. Yeah, it's 92. It's got a 92% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So I don't know if they were a little bit nervous. Maybe they weren't quite sure how the critics would react to it. So they held it off a little long. But clearly they didn't need to because the critics seemed to really like it. I thought the movie was good. I didn't think it was great. I'm certainly not, it's not going to be one of those movies that I watch every month or watch every year. But it was good. Nothing cringy about it. It had some decent laughs. It had some charm, definitely. It's a nice little movie. It's definitely worth seeing. It's definitely worth seeing. I just don't think it's fantastic, but the audiences and the critics seem to love it. All right, let's move on here. Kristen Philippic writes, looking forward to the first Oscar bait season with AMC AList. This is a game changer. Dude, I mean, we've been talking so much about AMC AList. It is a game changer. I just used it again last night to go see Mile 22. Glad I didn't pay for that movie. Used it to go see Mile 22 last night. I am using this thing to death. Like, you're limited to 3 movies per week, but I am like maxing it out, like 3 movies per week every week. And you're right, as we get into a lot of Oscar season, and this is the great thing about movie clubs, whether it's A-List or Movie Pass or Cinemia or Cinemark's Movie Club or whatever, the great thing is it will encourage you and entice you to check out some films that maybe otherwise you wouldn't have normally checked out. And that's especially great going into Oscar season because a lot of people, they don't go to watch some of the best movies of the year, a lot of these Oscar films. And I think maybe now that we have, the movie club thing is so dominant now that hopefully more people like you, Kristen, like me, will go see even more of these films when maybe before they might have taken a pass. So that's just a great thing, and I'm really happy for that. All right, Tristan Sheehan writes, I think we could see the Xandar scene cut from Infinity War to help tell the origin of Nova in his rumored movie down the line. Your thoughts? Nope. There's a misconception. There are people who think that they shot a Xandar scene where Thanos went there to get the stone that they allude to in Avengers Infinity War. They never shot that scene. That scene was in an early draft of the movie, but it was never actually shot. So it's not like it was shot and then later cut out of the movie, and therefore sitting in a vault somewhere that we can see sometime. It was never shot. So since it was never shot, it's not something we're ever going to see, unfortunately. All right, the Friendly Film Fan says, Adonis Creed versus Son of Drago, who do you got? Well, I mean, come on. The movie's called Creed. Creed's going to win. I have a feeling, though, because in the trailer we see Adonis in the hospital after what looks like taking the beating of his life. I have a feeling he fights Drago twice. Now, maybe the beating of his life came at the hands of somebody else, and then later he fights Drago, I guess. That could happen. But I have a feeling, and I'm just speculating here, that there are 2 fights. So it's kind of like a Rocky 3 situation where Rocky fought Clubber Lang, got his ass handed to him, come back, so you don't think I can beat him, and then beats him. Maybe that's the same that's going on here with the Son of Drago. But obviously, at the end of the day, Creed's going to win. James L.H. writes, Ruby Rose, I mainly remember her from John Wick 2. Yeah, this goes back actually like last week. Somebody mentioned Ruby Rose because she's been cast to play Batwoman in the CW verse. At least for the Arrow Flash crossover, and then assuming if that goes well, they're going to order it to series. And I said at the time, I've never really seen her in anything because I never watched Orange is the New Black and blah, blah. And then some people reminded me that she was the deaf girl in John Wick 2. And I totally forgot about that. It's still hard to gauge how good is she as an actress when she doesn't use any words. Like, she's just there doing the physicality of it a lot. And she was great in that, but I can't really judge. None of us can really judge, well, what does that tell us about her as an actress? But then I saw her in The Meg. And in a movie where it looks like nobody did that good of a job, she actually stood out. Now, I'll be honest, I thought Ruby Rose gave the best performance in The Meg. I do. And I've never really seen her act in anything else before. Again, as somebody who doesn't watch Orange is the New Black. So she impressed me on that. Okay. Let's see. Leader of Bats writes, popcorn or nachos at the movies? Oh, no, I never order nachos at the movies. Never order. It's always popcorn. Always popcorn soaked in butter. Popcorn is just a butter delivery device, my friends. Always popcorn. The moment I walk into a theater's doors, my mouth starts watering. It's a Pavlovian response. Right? You know the Pavlov thing where they ring a bell and the dog, you ring a bell as you're feeding the dog. Now, if you ring the bell, the dog's mouth salivates because it's in anticipation. When I walk into a theater, just automatic action of my brain, my mouth starts watering because I get excited for the popcorn. So yes, absolutely popcorn. Let's see. Thor Forns writes, could you tell about DC Universe? Could you tell about DC Universe if it can be available in Europa, Scandinavia? A huge DC fan of comics, film, and digital comic views. So I'm not quite sure what you're asking, Thor. If you're asking if the DC streaming service will be available in like Europe, Scandinavia, stuff like that, honestly, I have no idea. I have no idea. To be really frank with you, I haven't been paying really close attention to what's coming with that DC streaming service, because right now nothing on it looks appealing to me. Like that, oh my God, that Titans trailer was brutal. Fuck Batman. I mean, it was awful. Just awful. So until I see something coming out of there that is quasi-interesting to me, I'm really not paying that much attention. So straight up, man, I honestly don't know if it's going to be available overseas or not. I really don't. Like, you would think that all these streaming services would also be available overseas, but then I was executive producer of a show on Verizon Go 90, and then I found out later that our shows were not available overseas. So it's like, why wouldn't you make them available overseas? I never knew, I never understood, but for right now, I just don't know if DCS plans to do that or not. I would assume they would, but I just don't know for sure. So let's keep our eyes open for that. All right, leader of Bats writes, do you like the idea of the Joker being super sane? He knows he's in a comic book. That's why he has no remorse, because he knows none of it is real. Nah, that's a little too Deadpoolish. Like, that's Deadpool is a character who knows he's in a comic book and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that's something they've done in the comics with Joker before, but even if they have, I don't like the idea. It's a little too derivative of what they've already do with Deadpool. So, I personally, I don't like the idea. Personally, I don't like it. But hey, there could be good arguments for it, and maybe there are people who love the idea of it, and that's great. But, right off the top of my head, it's not something that I dig. All right, ZCM Zombie Custom Maps writes, have you seen Leave No Trace yet? No, the one with Ben Foster. Still haven't. I went, when I was checking about the local theaters here, I didn't see it listed anywhere. So which sucks, because I believe Ben Foster is like a tragically underrated actor. Like, this dude's amazing. I've loved him ever since 30 Days of Night. But then, you see him in 3:10 to Yuma, a movie he's in with Russell Crowe and Christian Bale, two of the biggest heavyweights in acting, and he upstaged both of them. I mean, that's how good Ben Foster is. And so it was somebody on the show who first told me, it might have even been you, ZCM, about this film and about Ben Foster. I'm like, well, I got to see it, but I have not had a chance to see it yet. So still keep my eyes open for it, though. All right, Donnie Pearson writes, hey, John, should the Disney 21st Century Fox deal be complete next year, would Disney fold TC Turner Classic Films TV into ABC Studios? Oh, I have no idea. Look, there are so many. You got to know that the contracts for this purchase are going to be hundreds, if not thousands of pages long, right? With details that we still have no idea about, and we probably will not get a real idea about for another year or two. So first of all, what Disney is even going to do, it looks like Disney is going to strip Fox for parts. That's what it looks like. And there's some wisdom to that. But we don't know for sure. We don't know what they're going to do with those television properties. We just don't know at this point. And there is no way for us to know. So we're just going to have to wait a little while longer and be a little patient, and then we'll figure out. And again, we're still probably a good year away, but it'll come to light at one point or another, I'm pretty sure. Horn of Gondor, I love that name. Horn of Gondor 117 writes, Warner Brothers wants to hire James Gunn. Your thoughts? Well, of course they do. He's a great director. I don't care whether you're talking about Super. I don't care if you're talking about PG porn. I don't care if you're talking about Slither, which still is my favorite film of his. You got Guardians 1, you got Guardians 2. He's shown he can do small, little, quirky, fun comedies. He's shown he can do big blockbuster films and make them great and have the audiences love his films and come out and support them, blah, blah, blah. That dude's available. Look, we saw in the Hollywood Reporter put out that movie executives and studios are just lining up to work with this guy. They're just waiting for his deal to be finalized with Disney, signing whatever deal they are for them to part ways so they can hire him immediately. That Hollywood Reporter mentioned that, story mentioned that the other studios have to wait until he signs that final separation agreement with Disney before they can offer him projects. But including Warner Brothers, they specified that Warner Brothers are just lining up and waiting to throw offers at him. So he'll be working for somebody, whether it's Warner Brothers first, or whether it's, Paramount, or whether it's Fox, or whether it's, and it can be Fox, because Fox is not owned by Disney yet, Fox or Universal or Lionsgate or whoever, they're going to be throwing films at him And you better believe DC's going to offer him, Warner Brothers is going to offer him a DC film. I feel very confident. I don't know that. I'm speculating, but I feel very confident about that. Now, whether or not he'll accept it, I don't know. But we're going to have to wait and see. Okay. NJA writes, Metal Gear movie by Voight Roberts. Thoughts? Well, I mean, whether or not it's going to happen, look, Voight Roberts is the guy who directed the recent King Kong movie, right? And I thought it was a pretty good little movie. I didn't think it was awesome, but I thought it was okay. I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I'm certainly looking forward to King Kong versus Godzilla. I think that's going to be great. Anyway, it got announced that he was developing a Metal Gear movie, right? But it's kind of floundered. Now, in recent days, he's released like concept art that he's hired artists to do a bunch of concept art. Nothing that would officially be in the movie, but just concept art. It's great. I don't really know enough of his filmography to have a solid foundation. All I know really of his is King Kong. And King Kong was pretty good. I'm not doing backflips over it, but it was pretty good. So I'm totally, if this movie ever gets going, and that's a big if, but if it does, I will certainly give him the benefit of the doubt till I see it. Because I saw him do a big budget, kind of big scale thing with big scale, no pun intended, big scale thing with King Kong, and I thought it was okay. I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. What more can you ask? So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for Metal Gear. I'll go, sure, yeah, let's see what he can do if it ever actually happens. Because right now, it's never been given a green light. And we've seen lots of movies just languish in development hell and then never actually happen. So until I hear something official, I'm just not going to assume that this movie is happening. I'm not assuming it's not going to happen, but I'm not going to assume it's happening until we actually see them, pull the trigger on this and get it greenlit. All right. Life of Logan, nice name, writes, when do you expect Marvel to announce Phase 4 movies? We only know of 3 more movies right now. Phase 3 was announced in October of 2014. I think you're not going to see that anymore. Like, I remember the big special event that Marvel had held down in Hollywood at the El Capitan Theater. I was there. Sitting 5th row, like 2 rows back and a few seats over from like Kevin Feige until he got up on stage. I was there. I remember it. You remember they put the video up online when they announced all the Phase 3 films and all the movies and blah, blah. That's when they first announced Captain America Civil War, and they had Robert Downey Jr. come out and Chris Evans come out, and they introduced Chadwick Boseman, and he came out, and Chris and Robert were tug-of-warring on his arm. I mean, it was a great event. But I think they've looked at what happened with DC a couple times. Remember, DC's come out and announced, we're doing these 85 movies, and then 84 of them get dumped and get trashed, right? So I think the day of Disney making an announcement of the next 10 movies, I got a feeling those days might be gone. I think that what they might announce is 2 or 3 movies ahead. But, I mean, I don't know that. They may very well, after Christmas, as we're getting close to Captain Marvel, or maybe even after Captain Marvel, like sometime after Captain Marvel, but before Avengers 4, maybe they'll do another big event and announce the next 7 movies coming after Spider-Man Far From Home. I don't know. I have a little bit of a sneaking feeling that they might change their philosophy and not get too far ahead of themselves. And maybe start announcing like 3 movies at a time. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. But, I mean, the industry's changed a little bit. Because remember, at that event in 2014, they made a big announcement about the Inhumans movie. And, look, they got egg on their face. No Inhumans movie. They got egg on their face. Kevin Feige does not like egg on his face. Nobody does. Nobody does. But especially somebody who's as good as Kevin Feige does not like egg on his face. So that was the thing if they got too far ahead of themselves. So maybe they won't want to do that again. And maybe they already know what the next 10 movies are, but maybe they just play it close to the vest and just reveal a little bit at a time. We're going to find out soon enough. But I would expect sometime in between Captain Marvel and Avengers 4. That's when I think we're going to start getting the announcements of some of the films however many, whether it's 1, 2, 5, 7, that come after Spider-Man Far From Home. All right, next one. Hardy Buck writes, watched The Terminal for the first time. You said you don't like it, but I thought it was entertaining and heartwarming. Well, you know what, Hardy? That's the beautiful thing about movies, man. Just because one guy likes something doesn't mean you have to. And just because another guy dislikes something doesn't mean you can't like it. That's the great thing about film. For those of you who don't know, The Terminal is, to me, Steven Spielberg's One Bad Day at the Office. And Tom Hanks is in it, by the way. And Stanley Tucci's in it, and whatever. But to me, and Catherine Zeta-Jones is in it, it's Spielberg's One Bad Day at the Office. It's the one Steven Spielberg film that to me isn't good. It's the one Spielberg film that I just don't get anything out of. I find it cheesy, and I find it kind of cringy, and the humor doesn't work for me, and blah, blah. And I see they're going for heart, but to me, they never hit the mark. But for some other people, because film is subjective, it does hit the mark, like yourself. And if you like it, that's awesome. I celebrate that. That's wonderful. It doesn't work for me, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't work for you. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on that, Hardy. All right, next up, Roy L. writes, Black Klansmen tonight. Are you going to check it out? Yes. As a matter of fact, Ann and I had plans to go see it the other night, and then something came up that precluded us from being able to go out to the movies. Since then, every night for one of us has been booked. And like, for instance, like last night was Ann's Dungeons and Dragons night. Her work, we have our Dungeons and Dragons night on Sundays, but she's got her Hasbro Dungeons and Dragons nights on Thursday. So that was that. Then today on Friday, we're leaving to go out of town for a friend's wedding out of town. And we're going to be gone for a couple days, so we're not going to be able to see it then. And then Sunday, when we do get back on Sunday, we've got our Dungeons and Dragons night. And then Monday, I've got a press screening for Happy Time Murders. So that's Monday. And then Tuesday, we have tickets to a live Broadway show at the Pantages in LA. So there's that. Maybe Wednesday, we'll get to go see it. But it's one of those movies that we want to go see together. So it's been kind of tough for us to line up our schedules to go see that. But I'm dying to see it. Eric Faraz writes, who was your first movie crush? If you can't remember, what is one you remember? For me, it was Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane. That one's easy for me. It was Courtney Cox from Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Courtney Cox in Ace, she was so, first of all, Courtney Cox is still incredibly pretty. But I remember at that time when she shot Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, it was like, wow. And I thought maybe the most beautiful any woman has ever looked, or any human being has looked in a movie, until I saw Cameron Diaz in The Mask. Cameron Diaz is in The Mask. Man, woman, or child is the most beautiful creature of any man who's ever appeared in a movie, out of any woman, out of any child who's ever appeared in a movie. Nobody's ever looked as good as she did in that film. Oh my God. But yeah, Courtney Cox was my first celebrity crush, was Courtney Cox. And I remember right after I moved to LA, like the first week I lived in LA, David Arquette had this little movie of his, I think called The Tripper. This little horror movie of his. And they were debuting it at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, which is a great place to watch movies. And I got a email from his publicist who said, David would like to invite you to come down. I'm like, cool. I'd never met David Arquette. And at the time, he was married to Courtney Cox. And it was like, man, is it weird? So I shake his hand. I got a picture of me and him, but I said, is it weird that your wife is like my celebrity crush, like for the last 15, 20 years? And he just, nope, mine too. It was really funny at the time. So there's my story on that. Let's see. Caesar Figueroa writes, hey, John, one good question for you. With all this talk about James Gunn getting fired, will WB pick him up? And what movie do you think he will direct? Well, we've already kind of talked about, look, the studios are lining up. It's going to be which studio. Remember, directors don't work for one studio. Directors can direct different films from different studios. So it's not like whoever he goes with next, he can only make movies with them. That's not the case. The question is, what does he want his next movie to be? Does he maybe want to get away from the big budget and do a more modest budget comedy? Maybe a little horror film? Because remember, he's got roots in trauma and things like that. Or maybe does he want to stick it to Disney a little bit and go, hey, yeah, Warner Brothers, hell yeah, give me a DC movie. I'll make you a movie. So I don't know. It really all depends what he wants to do. We do know that Warner Brothers is going to offer him a film. The question will be, does James Gunn want to take their film? Does he want to take a film from Universal? Does he want to take a film from Paramount? Because according to the Hollywood Reporter and all the trades, they're lining up to offer him gigs. So it's all going to be about which one he chooses to do. Sebastian writes, indirectly making the case for Pop, 98% Black Panther versus 97% Logan, tomatoes and higher user ratings. Where is Black Panther coming up short for Oscar folks and you? My son's favorite is Logan, by the way. I watch Avengers 4 By the way, I watch A4 most, but BP number 1 YTD. I don't know, guys. Please, guys, when you write in these things, please don't use abbreviations throughout your whole message, because then I got to sit there and try to interpret what it is you're saying. As far as, look, 98% does not mean it's a 98% movie. People always misunderstand how to use Rotten Tomatoes. 98% just means 98% of the people liked it. Doesn't mean they thought it was the best movie ever. It just means they liked it. That tells me as an audience member that I have a really good chance that I will like the film. But it doesn't mean it's the best film of the year. Not by any stretch of the imagination. All it means is that there's a really high chance that since all these critics who are so different from each other and have wildly different types of opinions and wildly different types of tastes, if 98% of them like it, it doesn't guarantee it, but it means there's a pretty good chance I'll at least like it too. It doesn't mean it's the best picture of the year. Not at all. That's not how Rotten Tomatoes work. That's not how those critic ratings work. So, look, I think Black Panther's great. I like it. One of those thumbs up is from me. I had a really good time watching it. I think I saw it like 4 times in theaters. I love that movie. I think it's great. But it's not that it falls short. It's just that it doesn't climb as high as some of the other. Like, A Quiet Place to me is clearly a better film. There are a couple other movies that have come out this year that I think are clearly better films. That's just my opinion. And all films subjective. And your opinion is no less valid than mine. So it's not a matter of, how are you saying Black Panther falls short? I'm not saying it falls short. I'm just saying there are other films that are better. That's all I'm saying. But I love Black Panther. I think it's great. If you saw my review for it, you know I think it's great. But yeah, to me, it's not a Best Picture contender. That's just how I feel about it, but whatever. It's just one man's opinion. Let's see. And that'll do it, guys, for today's installment of the companion video. Thanks a lot for getting caught up here with me, guys. Hey, like I said, if you're somebody who's been waiting for a question to pop up in a companion video and you didn't see it pop up here, don't worry about it. I still got a whole bunch of them lined up that I got to do in future companion videos. Like I said, I'm going to have a few more come out this weekend. Keep your eyes open for that. All right, guys, that'll do it for me for now. Thanks for joining me for this companion video. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.